During my 25 years as a pediatrician, homeschooling rates have grown tremendously. COVID certainly had a lot to do with this, and Tampa has now been determined to be the homeschooling capital of America. So let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Dr. David. So as a pediatrician who has always believed in the ability of a person's right to choose, not just for healthcare, but for education, I have always been somewhat of a magnet for families who are choosing to homeschool. Okay, and this has been since the very beginning, since we opened the practice here. It's been 20 years ago now. Wow. And so, there's a lot of factors involved with this. I know it's a topic that's interesting to a lot of people. So I figured, hey, let's do a video about it. Now, we've always been the safe haven for the families who are homeschooled, probably because we are in belief of supporting their decisions. And that's true for both health decisions as well as education decisions. That's why our tagline has always been health, education, and choices, right? Get it? Okay. Now, of course, if you want health choice and you want education choice, then we want to be able to provide that for you. But I wanted to talk a little bit about it because the landscape of homeschooling has certainly changed throughout the course of my career. Okay, now, back in 2012, even in terms of the type of families who are looking to do homeschooling, that's changed because back then, about 2 out of 3 families who were choosing to do homeschooling were doing it to provide a more religious background and instructioning as the main reason. So that's a large number, about 65% of families. That's why they chose to homeschool. Now, it wasn't all of my patients, and for me, it was about half. I certainly did have a lot of people who just wanted alternative approaches to education as well, but certainly a large percentage. Now, by 2016, 4 years later, that number dropped to about a half of the families claiming that's the reason why. And then by around 2019, 2020, that number dropped even further to about 35%. So it's still a very large number, but at the same time, lots of things have changed as to what other reasons why families are seeking out home care. Now, in terms of actually where are people doing homeschooling, this was something that I found somewhat fascinating because of the 10 school districts throughout the country, 9 of the 10 highest who do in terms of the rates of homeschooling, 9 of those 10 school districts are here in Florida. And as I mentioned, the number 1 school district in America is Hillsborough County, which is where Tampa is located. Okay, so we have a lot of peoples here, and of course, this means it's something that's pretty important. Now, in Hillsborough County alone, there were 10,680 students who were homeschooled at the beginning of this of the 2022-2023 academic year. So that was about a year ago. And now there has been population growth. One of the things that happened during COVID, a lot of people moved to Florida. Some of it because of the better weather, of course, some of it because of the less restrictions for COVID, the fact that kids were back in school where other families were not able to take their kids to school in-house if they were in other states. Okay, so certainly that overall population growth would contribute to the overall growth of education, right? But while there was a 43% increase in population of public school enrollment in particular, there was a 74% increase in the homeschool population. So 43% overall enrollment into schools, but again, 3 out of 75% increase in homeschoolers. Okay, now, why? In terms of what's going on, what's causing this? Now, certainly homeschooling has become an option because people want different approaches to their education. Okay, and of course, some people will send their children to private schools, both religious schools, but also secular schools, but they just may not be comfortable with what is happening in the public school systems in Florida with the approach that the administration is currently going. And so, Florida has a push away from diversity, away from equity and integration and inclusion. Okay, some people aren't comfortable with that. That was something that was important to us. We want our child to feel safe, that they can be in a diverse population and not have to feel like that's a bad thing, which is kind of the way that the public schools are now appearing in, according to the state of Florida Department of Education. Okay, but also, the book bannings, the whitewashing of Black history. Remember, we talked about, when there was actually this, in the curriculum of Florida, where it was saying the benefits of slavery. Remember, that's what I certainly call, whitewashing. And I don't mean white versus Black; it's a term, right? So we're not going racial there. But also the antagonizing of the LGBTQ plus community, right? The bathroom bills, the pronouns, the fact that teachers can't talk about who they are without fear of repercussion, the inability to even hold conversations about these types of things in the community, sexual orientation, even reproductive health. A lot of those things are not allowed to be discussed fully in public schools anymore. And there are certain families who want that to be part of their child's more broad education. Okay. And of course, I do know that there are religious families who feel that there's too much of that, and that they want to have, that they want to be able to dictate how they teach those topics on their own terms. And, different people have their different opinions of that, and I respect all people's opinions. And if that's the way a family wishes to raise their child, that's the way they do it. Their education, their choice. Okay. Now, let's talk about what some of the advantages are for homeschooling. Okay, we'll talk about the disadvantages potential after that. Okay, now, of course, most importantly, parents can teach their children in a manner that supports their lifestyle, their religious, or their personal beliefs. Now, some families, completely unrelated to that, their kids may feel more safe with all the bullying that's been going on, right? The concern about school shootings. Some families just aren't comfortable sending their kids off to school when those things, having to do the types of drills, not just, I know in generations past there were bomb drills that were done, but now, like, active shooter drills have to happen in school. And that can be really scary for somebody just to have to even be thinking about it, although it is the reality, which is so sad. Okay. If a family is choosing to homeschool, they may find, especially if one of the parents is a stay-at-home parent, that compared to private school, it may be a lot less expensive, because private schools can easily push over $30,000 these years. Now, also more flexible scheduling, and this is something that I've had for a few of my patients. They may be elite athletes. I've had high schoolers who have gone off to train in Olympics, in Olympic training, because they may actually be able to make it to the Olympics, or elite performers in musicals, in theater, I should say, or in musical abilities and instruments that they may play, where they're maybe touring. I have a child who, I should say, teenager, who tours nationally as a piano player. So they may want to be doing homeschooling so that they can do the traveling that they need to do. Okay. Now, also, let's face it, there's going to be a better teacher to student ratio, right? Because, even if you're homeschooling a family of a dozen, it's still a better better ratio than what any public school would be able to provide. Okay. Now, another thing, I've had parents who tell me that they are not comfortable with the nutrition that is being fed to their kids, or that they're seeing. Okay. You may have heard about the standard American diet, or we call the SAD diet. And if kids are going off and they're sharing foods or trading foods, etc. And some families want to have more control over what their kids are eating. Okay. Also, just the flexibility to learn at the kid's own pace. Obviously, in a public school setting, even in some private school settings, there's obviously a pace where they have to have this done by this date and this done by this date. And some students may not learn that way. Some students may find that it's better to spend all day learning on a particular topic, and then the next day another topic. Some kids may need more time to immerse themselves, or to even be caught up with what they're doing. And those, of course, are tough to do when there is a classroom setting where there may be 20 or 30 different kids in that one class. Okay, so so that those are things, and those are certainly advantages and things that would make sense to me. But of course, there is the potential for some disadvantages. Okay, and in particular, it can be costly, because let's say a parent has to take off work to do it, and all of a sudden they're losing an income, or perhaps they need to hire tutors in order to help their kids out in order to do that, because obviously it may not be that difficult for a parent of a second grader to fully educate their child, but once they get to high school and they're learning more advanced mathematics and science, they may not have the abilities to actually do that. So whether they're paying for a tutor online or a co-op that they may be bringing kids together with, those all do cost money that they'd have to pay for as well. Of course, there's the potential that they may miss out on some topics. So the parents themselves may not look at this as a disadvantage, but If they decide, hey, we don't want to be teaching our kid another language, which of course is a very important thing for most kids, both to have the knowledge of how to do, but also in a world economy. Maybe they don't want to teach about sex ed. Okay. And again, that's really unfortunate because let's face it, teenagers, whether you are teaching an abstinence approach, a just say no approach, kids have sex. They do. They're going to fool around, but if you're not teaching about how to prevent pregnancy, if you're not teaching about how to prevent sexually transmitted infections, HIV, herpes, gonorrhea, and syphilis are on the rise now. But the kids need to know about these types of things. And obviously, parents can teach what they want in terms of what their feelings about premarital sex may be. But at the same time, kids may not be getting that information. But not only that, but even just about not just reproductive health as a whole, but also about sexual orientation. We live in a world where a strong minority of people are gay. They are, and obviously a smaller percentage are transgender. But some parents don't even want to, they want to just pretend it doesn't even happen. But there's a real world out there, and they're going to come in contact with them. Their kids may even be that way and may feel completely oppressed or not even comfortable coming out about those things because they know what their parents' thoughts are. And of course, that's tough when a kid can't be who they want to be. And of course, that's when we start talking about the suicide that's and harmfulness to themselves that a lot of people in that community are doing. And that's an incredible shame. Okay. Now, also, it's just different perspectives overall. Maybe, parents are going to teach history from a different perspective and not a more global perspective or different points of view. And of course, the kids may themselves be missing out on diversity, right? Depending on their district, they may not be able to attend to be participating in and sporting events, which could be important for them. They may want to participate in sports. Some districts will allow for that, but not all districts do. But of course, if a child is never around somebody who's a different religion than them, or a different skin color than them, or just a different beliefs, or maybe who have parents who are who are gay. We need to have diversity in this world. It's very narrowing. It's not a full, complete education if your kids aren't getting that type of exposure. Okay. So what's my take on this overall? First of all, it's sad. It's sad that the public schools, at least here in Florida, are not giving the type of information that some parents want their kids to live because of all of these restrictions that have been placed. I understand, why parents are choosing to homeschool, and that's why I will continue to support their decisions, and I can help them with their making decisions. I can help them, when I talk to teenagers, it's very important that we give them privacy without the parents in the room so we can talk about some of these issues. Might be the only time that the kid is having that type of conversation with another adult. So, all those things make it certainly important. But as I kind of have alluded to before, it's not just your health, your choice. It's your education, your choice. I hope you choose wisely. Have a nice day.